Hello and welcome to Qtr Time Podcast in partnership with Lovell Netball. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P. And we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed.
Hello everybody and a big welcome to episode 5 of Qtr Time Podcast. Another week done and dusted, Luce, and as always there is so much to digest from both Netball Super League and of course the launch of the 2023 season of the ANZ Premiership over in New Zealand. So what have we got coming up on the show today?
Well, you're spot on there, Luce. There is a lot going on, a lot of netball action this week. So we're going to start off with our classic 3-word summaries of the Netball Super League before we welcome our expert guests to help us unpack the ANZ season opener. So this week, we've got former Silver Ferns captain and current Sky Sports commentator Anna Stanley on the pod.
How exciting. Love a bit of Anna.
Yeah, she's awesome. Love her.
Right, so let's dive straight into our 3-word summaries. First up on Friday was Thunder versus Lightning. Very, very frightening. Sorry. And Thunder actually took the win 62-55. And I've gone for critical players exposed. What a cracker of a game this one was. Really, really enjoyed this one. Probably the most anticipated game of the round, and in my opinion it didn't disappoint. It was really entertaining. Lightning just looked terribly out of sorts without Hannah Joseph, really exposing just how critical she is for Lightning. And I think Nat Panagari, bless her, she pretty much carried the team on her shoulders for the first half of that game. It looks like Liversidge was also out of action for this game because she had like a hoodie on or something. She didn't look like she was ever getting ready to get on court, which is a huge shame for them. But I really wish that they would have explored Rhea Dixon in wing attack with Thacker in goal attack, because Hannah Williams, I know she's a youngster, hugely talented, but boy, did she struggle against Taylor McKevitt. For Thunder, on the other hand, every person just really stood up in this game. And I actually think the scoreline could have been significantly bigger if McKevitt and Van der Merwe were left on in wing D and GD respectively. They were both outstanding with 5 intercepts, 7 deflections and 9 turnovers between them.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I really like what you said there about moving Rhea Dixon into wing attack, because we have seen her play there for the Roses. I know it wasn't very much and it was only a couple of tests, but we know she's such a creative playmaker. And I think that could have been maybe the difference that Lightning needed on that day with no Hannah Joseph and no Susie Liversidge.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
Next up on Saturday, it was Mavs versus Dragons, with Mavs taking a big win, 61-47. And I said, starting shooters depleted. This was a really tough day at the office for Dragons. Before the first whistle was even blown, they had 3 out of 4 of their shooters out injured for this game. From the very first centre pass, Mavs really put their foot down. It was a 17-8 opening quarter, and then from then on, it was pretty plain sailing. Monique Mayer was a standout, and her partnership with Gibson is really growing each week. I'm loving what they're putting out. Dragons still hunting for their second win of the season, and just wishing all their shooters a safe and swift recovery from their injuries.
Yeah, I mean, what bad luck, man, to have Rowe, Beard and Sinclair.
I know.
Oh, mate.
It reminds me of, was it the Stars in New Zealand a few years ago? And they just, it was Steele. And they just, like, shooters were just dropping like flies.
Yeah.
Not
bad
good.
Bad times. Following this game was Sirens versus Rhinos, our first draw of the season, 52 apiece. And rather uncreatively, I've gone for what a corker. What an interesting game. Everyone loves that kind of nail biter, don't know which way it's going to go. And it really was neck and neck throughout the entire game. And I was kind of like waiting for one of the sides to kind of lose their nerve or drop the ball a little bit, but they both really ground it out to the very end, so it was quite entertaining in that sense. I think credit to Rhinos for being able to perform with all the disruption that they've had recently. Obviously we had the news that Vandenberg wouldn't be joining the squad. It's looking likely to be the same for Nicola Smith, and the fact that I think it was the round 3 game was actually the first game that they've had under their actual head coach, Liana Leota. So there's just been huge amounts of disruption for them early on. They just seem to be almost a little bit cursed in that sense. Obviously, everything they had under Dan Ryan as well. So unlucky. For Sirens, though, they absolutely could have brought this one home if it wasn't for the unforced errors. They had 20 unforced errors to Rhino's 10, because everything else stat-wise was pretty much even Stevens. This just really let them down.
Yeah, it was very obvious, wasn't it? There was a bit of scrappiness. There, I don't think it was necessarily the most clinical game we've seen, but yeah, pretty exciting result nonetheless.
Yeah.
Moving on to Pulse versus Storm on Saturday. Woo! I'd almost forgotten about this game. Oh my goodness me. 52-47. And my 3-word summary is spicy turnover sandwiches.
Wait.
Oh, what?
Sandwiches?
Yeah.
How is it a sandwich?
Okay, I'll explain. So there were so many occasions where there would be like a turnover and then straight away they would turn it back, like Liv Cheen with the arms over, or Liz Scholes got a few of them, a few tips in the midcourt, things like that. So it's like one turnover, then another turnover.
Yeah, but you need like some meat or something in the middle.
Okay, I'm not saying it makes sense. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it was spicy turnover sandwiches.
Okay, right. Go and have your lunch then. Tell us about the sandwiches.
Okay. But anyway, this game, oh my God, it was so good. I think despite Storm leading at half time, Pulse they just took the reins in quarter 3. It was 17-7. 17-7. To put that into context, that was by far Storm's lowest quarter score of the season and their worst quarter score deficit. In their previous 5 games, they've typically lost 1 quarter per game, but they'd made up for it by dominating in either one or more of the other quarters and building that buffer. But Pulse were able to keep the scoreline so narrow. They just responded really well to the changes in momentum, learned lessons throughout the game. For example, don't pass the ball anywhere near the postcode of Layla Gusketh. And on numerous occasions when they're losing possession, they immediately won it back. That's what I'm talking about with the sandwiches.
Okay.
And they missed 1 shot in the entire game.
Wow.
1.
Okay, yeah, fair one.
Yeah. Further drama. The reason I said it was spicy turnover sandwiches was because Mickey Austin picked up a warning in quarter 4 for delaying the centre pass, and SDL had one for intentional contact. I mean, I think, to be honest, Pulse just had Storm well and truly rattled. So, point of action, mark April the 29th, 6 p.m. in your diaries, because the rematch for this one is going to be super spicy.
I've actually just realised I'm on a hen do that weekend, so I won't even be able to watch it. I have to catch up on that
Sky.
one.
It's on Sky. You'll have to have it on your phone in the corner under the table or something.
I am 100% that kind of person as well.
Yeah. So. Don't tell the bride.
I mean, what a game. So gutted this one wasn't streamed, because this would have hands down been our game of the round otherwise.
Yeah, for sure. I was screaming.
Yeah.
I basically had no voice by the end. Yeah, it was so good. It was a great vibe, but it just means get your tickets for all the Pulse games. I think Pulse Lightning particularly is going to be really wicked. So yeah, defo get down there.
Yeah, for sure. And final game of the round then was Stars versus Bath, with Stars coming away victorious 67-50. And I've gone for Find Your Shooters. For me, this game was all about the attacking woes of Bath. The placement into the shooters for them really needed some serious work, as does their attacking unit in general. I was actually pleased to see Kadeen Corbin starting in goal shooter. Because I've said this to you before, that I actually sometimes prefer her back there, to have her in a slightly more contained area. I think sometimes she can really shine there, but her and GS and Creek and GA it just wasn't clicking. They were either offering both the same thing or both creating too much movement. There was no kind of target there. But I would really like to see a Corbin Kelly circle. I don't think they've tried that yet from memory.
Haven't seen that from many of the streamed games.
Yeah, so I'd really like to see that, but it was all about the attacking problems for them. I think for Stars, Siggy well and truly had Pekova and Artman's number, and the placement of the ball to her was a stark contrast to that of Bath. Like, they were just finding her so easily, and she's really thriving at Stars at the moment. I think she's top of the table now, I think, amazing. There were just moments in this game where Bath just looked sloppy. I don't think they did themselves much justice, whereas Stars are looking really slick and connected. And I think you can just see that Jo Tripp is just getting the best out of her players, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, I think as well, you mentioned Siggy there. I think they said it in the commentary, but she does look like she's enjoying herself a lot more this year. And
Yeah,
she
for
is
sure.
such a strong target there. I mean, I wonder if, obviously, it's a World Cup year, South Africa. We don't know whether she'll be vying for contention potentially for that squad, but she's certainly doing everything she can to really show up and prove that she should be in the side.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised because she didn't make it into their first inaugural national program, did she?
But that was a different
shooting at like
coach.
94%. That is true. That is true. So I hope she does for her sake. Because
yeah, I think so. Well, she was at the 2019 World Cup under Norma. So who knows? So moving on to our game of the round, which was Sirens versus Rhinos. Obviously, it's hard to look past the Thunder Lightning game was epic, but this kind of result is exactly what we want. Although it's nice when there's a winner at the end, but I actually think a draw was probably fair in this game. I think it was just so even. I was quite interested to see Abby Tyrrell getting the start over Vinkumbu. I personally would have started Vinkumbu on someone like Ellie Bird to just bring that experience. Although I did think Tyrrell was having a good impact in the game, I think potentially Vinkumbu, I mean, she came on and she immediately had an impact. And you kind of think maybe if they'd started with that, they could have got a bit of a lead and built that buffer. But defensively, I think Emily Nicol and Oyasola were the standouts. Personally, prefer Oyasola in goal defence with McGee in goalkeeper, as it gives her more space because her closing speed is insane. And it's just ridiculous. Yeah. So many held balls in this game, which is what resulted in the high unforced errors. Robson 6, Oyella and Maxwell 5, Dix 3, and Reed 3. Yeah. And some of these, I will say, were a tad quick, but although the stats go down against the players we've mentioned, it's actually the responsibility of the other players, as there were so many times in this game where nobody was providing an option to the ball carrier, let alone two options.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I actually think the first half in particular, I know we've picked it as our game of the round, but it wasn't actually super great quality netball, if I'm honest. And I think I was just expecting a bit more from both these sides, but I do think it got better in the second half of the game, and obviously that really exciting finish. But I think something that stood out to me is that there is a clear difference in sort of these teams towards the bottom of the table versus the teams at the top of the table. Like I mentioned, it was scrappier. It was definitely less clinical. There were more missed shots for both teams. I think there was 8 for Sirens and 6 for Rhinos compared to just 1 and 3 for Pulse and Storm respectively this weekend. So there's a real difference showing for me between top half and bottom half of the table.
Yeah, I think so. And that is when you get these really good contests, is when teams who are close on the position and sort of similar matched can have these really good contests. So I'm glad that we saw this game sort of early on in the season. But other players to note, Oyella was outstanding in this game. She dictated in that attacking end. She's just such a creative player as well. And what I really like is that she's not afraid to go to post. 21 from 22. Very good day out as a goal attack. But the trouble was the Sirens attack did start to get caught in a few of the traps that Rhinos were laying, almost a bit naive at times. And on the other side for Rhinos, the creativity is there, but the connections aren't because they're such a new team.
But I actually think with Sirens, I was actually loving what Goodwin and Oyella were doing together. And I was gobsmacked when Goodwin was taken off the court. And as much love as I have for Emma Barry, I do not think that she had the same impact that Goodwin had. She missed a lot of shots and there was a couple of turnovers very early on. I don't think she's able to kind of muscle up enough yet. And obviously she is so young, so young. So I can understand that. But it was that choice to take Goodwin off court when she'd literally missed, I think, one goal up until that point. I was baffled.
Yeah, I don't think that was really where the problem was. The problem was more in the midcourt for Sirens.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, but my main takeaway is just around those critical moments and which team can execute. I don't feel that Sirens necessarily have the same belief that they had in that awesome 2021 season. Yeah. And I think it's kind of the same for Rhinos. I don't think they're quite there yet in terms of they believe that they can win and execute at a high level.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think it's to be expected for Rhinos, given how fresh the squad is, how new it is, and all the disruption they've had. But overall, I think it was still a really enjoyable game. And as a neutral fan, I think it was nice to have such high stakes in the final minutes, as we've seen a number of blowout games so far. I think there's only been a handful where the result's been within 5 goals. So yeah, to have I don't mind a draw. I'm perfectly happy with that. So I just thought it made it quite an exciting ending.
Yeah, no, agreed. Yeah, definitely was exciting.
Now, moving on to our player of the round. Again, this was quite a hard one to pick. I think you could have taken pretty much anyone from Manchester Thunder and they could have easily have been player of the round. But we have gone for Taylor McKevitt this week. Absolutely love Taylor, little pocket rocket. She had an outstanding game. She had the most turnovers on court with 5. She had 2 intercepts, 5 deflections, and just 6 penalties, and 0 unforced errors. Thank you very much. Just to put that in there.
Pretty good.
And she only played 3/4 of a game. Like, to get those stats in just 3/4 of a game is so impressive. And I think, like I mentioned in the summary, I was mind blown when she was taken off the court, because I thought she had monstered Hannah Williams to the nth degree, and I didn't particularly enjoy the combination of Ellia McCormick in goal defence and then Van der Merwe back out to wing defence and McKevitt off. So I personally wouldn't have made that change myself.
Yeah, I think it's really impressive how she's cemented herself in the starting lineup for Thunder and is really thriving there. I think she's just becoming such a menace on court and is really growing as a player in terms of the impact she can have on the game. But she needs to be left out there, I think, to really push for the full 60 minutes, because she is athletically and technically exceptional. I mean, some of those backing ups. It's a thing of beauty, honestly. And she just brings the ball through court really well. She knows when to slow down the transition on the turnover, because I think that's maybe what you didn't necessarily get from Van der Merwe, is that reset. I think she was often quite pushing and trying to gain ground, whereas Taylor would take a second and look back, and then they would be in a much better position on a turnover. But yeah, she's a great, smart player. Really love Taylor. Have a lot of time for her.
Yeah, I think we have to see her within the main Roses, because she's in, is it Futures at the moment? Yeah, we have to see her within the main Roses setup very soon, I think, personally.
Have to agree.
So coming up after the break, we chat to former Silver Fern and current Sky Sports broadcaster Anna Stanley all about round 1 of the ANZ Premiership. If you haven't watched the ANZ, guys, trust me, it is totally worth getting into it. If you're based in the UK and you're an early riser, then you're in luck, because games are often on first thing in the morning. So it's worth checking out the schedule. There's 3 games a week. All the games are available to watch for viewers outside of New Zealand via the ANZ website. It's completely free. You just got to make an account. It's top quality broadcasting. So good. So I'll chat with Anna coming up just after the break.
I don't know about you, Luce, but it gets to this point in the season and all I'm thinking about is getting new trainers. You know, when you're just eyeing them up all the way through, I'm feeling it.
Yeah, I love a bit of new stash, but I'm that type of person. I'll put all of these things into my basket, spend hours and hours looking around, but then I'll never actually go through with it. It just sits in my basket forevermore.
It's so true. I know, honestly, can relate. But luckily, Lovell Netball are offering a 15% discount on all first-time orders with code NETPOD15 at lovellnetball.co.uk. So you're sorted.
Yeah, and honestly, Lovell Netball is the place to go. Whatever you want, they've got absolutely everything.
Everything. Such a good range. Yeah.
So whether you're looking for trainers, you're looking for bibs, you're looking for supports, whatever you need.
Sports bras, all of that stuff.
Sports bras, exactly. They have got you covered. So don't forget, that's a 15% discount off all first-time orders with the code NETPOD15 at lovellnetball.co.uk.
Love a bit of Lovell. Oh my God.
Love a bit of Lovell.
Love a bit of Lovell. Happy shopping, guys. It is such a delight to welcome former Silver Ferns captain and current Sky Sports netball broadcaster Anna Stanley onto the pod. How are you doing, Anna?
Welcome. Thank you. I'm very well, thanks.
We know you've been obviously very busy with the round one of the ANZ. How are you feeling? You a bit tired after a big round of netty?
Yeah, well, it was just exciting to get 2023 underway, I think. It's often a long time coming, although we did have the quad series in Cape Town at the beginning of the year. It's always nice to kickstart the season. And of course, it's such a big year for netball with it being a World Cup year. So plenty of pressure around performing right from the get-go. And obviously round one is done and dusted in New Zealand. So yeah, it was a good start.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting, actually. I think there's definitely a sense of heightened pressure and expectation with it being a World Cup year. And obviously, we heard a few times in the commentary this weekend that there's not going to be any trials for the Silver Ferns. So it's really just every week they have to put their heart out there. What's that like as a player that kind of absorbing all that pressure, not only from your club environment wanting to win, but also the kind of external factors as well?
Yeah, I think, when you have trials, there's opportunity to play with different combinations from players that perhaps you don't play in your franchise. So that's the benefit of having a trial. So I guess players now know that they won't have that opportunity, and you just have to go out there and perform at your best. And I think the key for a lot of players and teams this year will be consistency. At times we've seen a real lack of consistency, showing up one week and then not the next. And I just don't think this year the players can afford that, given there is no trial situation. So coaches will want to see that they can back it up, that they can maintain that intensity, absorb that pressure. So yeah, I think the pressure does go on, but that's high performance sport, and that's where the best athletes flourish.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously there is so much competition in that Silver Fern setup, and I'm sure we'll come on to a few names who will be definitely vying for selection a little bit later on in the year. But before we get into some game specific questions and recap the first round, I just wanted to get a sense of where netball is in New Zealand at the moment. How do you think the ANZ compares to the other two major domestic netball competitions, obviously the Netball Super League in England and the SSN over in Australia?
I think the depth is certainly growing. I mean, we often hear that the SSN in Australia, they pitch it as the best competition in the world, and
I think they're the ones saying that usually, though.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue, given the players that they have, so many players from all over the world, but also that has its detriment as well, because they're not really building depth in certain positions. And you look across a lot of the SSN goal shooting positions, a lot of them are all imports. So then you go, well, where's the depth? Where are they building these Australian goal shooters? So in New Zealand, we only have a one import rule per team. So this year we actually only have 3 imports, because poor old George Fisher, your English player, actually went down with an ACL injury. So she would have been our 4th. And I think that gives just the franchises license to build a bit more depth in each position. And I think over the last few years, we're starting to see, 2-3 per player deep in each position, which is boding well at that Silver Fern level. So I think the ANZ Premiership is a good competition. I mean, I probably wouldn't say that it's the best in the world, actually. I probably think the SSN one, probably from a franchise point of view, is probably one of the best. But you've got to have that balance. And I think what we're doing here in New Zealand is we've got that balance right.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's quite interesting, the different routes that the kind of 3 top competitions have taken. Obviously, in England, there's a 2 imports per team rule, 1 in New Zealand, and then unlimited in Australia, and the kind of impact that has on the wider netball world and the landscape in terms of growing the sport and all of those ramifications as well. But I think there's almost a misconception that the ANZ is fully professional, like the SSN, in terms of the players being full-time netballers on the whole. What's the ratio of fully professional to semi-professional in the current ANZ playing group?
Well, what defines being fully professional? I mean, none of our netball is not a fully professional sport in New Zealand, even though players earn a full-time living from it, which is crazy. All ANZ Premiership players would be semi-professional. So netball is their main source of income, but they all also do something else. So whether it's a little bit of part-time work, study, I think that's what they really encourage here in New Zealand, is that we want to grow that holistic athlete. And whilst netball is a big part of their life, we don't expect it to be the only part of their life, because that's how you build strong, resilient athletes. They've got to have something else passionate about. So, yeah, all players, get paid to play in New Zealand. Obviously, the higher tier Silver Fern players get more, and most of them are encouraged to do something else, which they all do.
Yeah, I really like what you said about that. And it reminds me, we had Courtney Bruce on the podcast last week, and she spoke about how we were talking about high performance mindset. And she said she's a better player when she has something else going on. And I think Layla Guskuth, who I'm sure you'll know, who's a doctor in the UK, she's also said that actually it makes her a better netballer when she's juggling these things and realizing that, she can put her heart into soul into netball, and then she can sort of shut the door on that and go back to the day job. So I suppose there's pros and cons of professionalizing fully, and we're still in those kind of that semi-professional stage.
And I guess now, we had, Jane Watson played last night, and she's just returned from her having her first child. And so in New Zealand, a lot of netballers are coming back after having children, which we think we've sort of really been the trailblazers around mums coming back and playing at that elite level. And we interviewed her last night, and we sort of said, how has your mindset changed now that you are a mum and still playing at that Silver Fern level? And she just said, when she gets to netball, she is 100% there. She's committed because she knows she's only got that 2 hours. And then when she gets home, she switches off and she becomes a mum. So I think you become a lot more present when you've got other things in your life. When you're playing netball, you know that that's your time to give it your all. And then when you leave the netball court, you switch off, which I think is really healthy as well.
Yeah, no, I really like that. And I think New Zealand has absolutely been leading the way. We've seen players come back in just unbelievably good form after pregnancy and giving birth. And there obviously is such great wraparound support going on in the kind of behind the scenes, particularly for those Silver Ferns players as well. But looking now at each of the games from the first round, the first game was Northern Mystics versus Southern Steel, with Mystics taking a 64-38 win. Steel obviously suffering with the loss of George Fisher, as you mentioned, Shannon Saunders, who's had her baby, and injuries to Selby Rickett and Saviour Tui for this game, as well as integrating Sam Winders into the new position of wing attacks. There's a lot going on for the Steel side at the moment. Mentally, from Steel's perspective, how do you come back after such a big defeat in round one?
Yeah, it was a real tough game for the Steel, wasn't it? I think they've had, as you say, 4 to 5 personnel changes, and it was just one of those games that you just want to dump, reflect on, but move on fairly swiftly. Look, I think, they would have had to have unpicked it and looked at where things went wrong. I thought, there were times where the connections just weren't there and they didn't look like they were playing as a 7, and that can often happen when, they had their leader out to Hunga Selby Rickett, who is the real stalwart of that Steel side and really brings her players together. So I think they certainly missed her, and then you've got Sammy playing in at wing attack, which is not her normal position, but I think perhaps is going to be her position in the Steel side. So she'll be still trying to find her feet. And then that shooting end was just completely different to what we used to. No Saviour, no George. So there would have been some hard questions, and the good thing about the Steel is that they've got great coaches, Joe Morrison and Ranga Bloxham, and they would have unpicked it, worked out what to do better next time. And it's just sometimes one of those games that you really don't want to dwell on too much, because just sort of actually nothing went right.
Yeah, it's almost a case of pretending like that was still the preseason and starting afresh from next week. I mean, the stats are not favourable for Steel. Centre pass to goal, 51%, gain to goal, 50%, shooting percentage, 75%. I mean, how can they go about improving on these crucial stats before their next game?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is having those connections. So that centre pass conversion rate was just not good enough. So it's about just doing those basics, having 2 options onto the ball. If you've got those connections and you've got that communication, you're running good lines and you can look into the circle, and that availability is crucial. I think at times, the girls were turning and there was just nothing on. And so really important that the girls are doing the work off the ball, putting the work in so that options are there. And ball retention is something that's always been a real strength of the Steel, holding on to the ball. So I think they just need to go back to that and actually hit the basics, and they'll start to find their feet. They've still got some good leadership and good players in that team. hopefully Selby Ricketts back soon. We do hear that, she's got a bit of a niggly calf, and as you get older, those injuries take a little bit longer to come back from. So that could be I'd be a little bit wary if she's not back for the Steel, because she'll be a huge loss in the coming rounds.
She's such a linchpin, obviously, isn't she, in that side? And I think what I felt from watching this game is that they haven't quite got trust with each other yet, because there's obviously those new combinations. And that's really what you want, is the knowledge that you're going to turn and somebody's going to be there backing you up, ready for you to move that ball down through court. And on the other side, the Mystics in this game were on fire. I mean, 15 games in the first half. They got all 11 players out on court. They seem to have such a balanced squad with experienced Silver Ferns as well as really exciting young talent. Where could it go wrong for the Mystics this season?
Well, it went wrong last season. They were number 1 for 10 rounds, and then Grace Wecky went down with an injury, and then they didn't make the final. So I think what we're seeing now, just over the course of the first round, is that coaches were quite prepared to make quite a few changes. We saw the Mystics made a lot of different combinations. Kerry Walls for the Stars last night, she got all her 10 players out on court. And I just don't know if it's because they're looking at what happened last year with the Mystics and they became very reliant on Grace Wecky. And when she got injured, then the team literally fell apart. So, I mean, crazily, we saw Grace at goal attack at one point in that game, which, I would have never thought putting her there. But I was actually talking to Lee Gibbs, who's one of the national selectors, before the game yesterday, and she said, I think at times Grace needs to move a little bit more in that circle, and she is becoming too reliant on that hold. And so maybe that's something that they're talking about. Let's get her out to goal attack, get her moving, get her a bit more familiar with moving her feet. Maybe that was the method to the madness by putting her at goal attack. But yeah, I agree. They're very sound right through court. And I think that's the real strength. They've got key players in each area of court. You've got Karaka and Fitzpatrick really leading down that defence end, the Silver Fern combination. You've got Taylor Earl, who's solid in the middle with Peta Toiava. And then, of course, the weapon of Wecky at the back. So, I mean, it's their competition to lose, I would say. The Mystics, they should go through and win this. And I think, the pressure should really be on them, given the lineup that they've got.
Yeah, no, calling it early. I like that. No, I would say I absolutely agree. I think the Mystics have just shown their complete dominance, and Grace Nweke in particular, her rise in the last sort of 2-3 seasons has been astronomical. I mean, we actually have chosen her. We've done the Qtr Time Trio this week. So we've picked a player from each third who we really liked, and she was our shooter. It's just undeniable that she is outstandingly good. What do you make of her rise over the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, I can't rave enough about her as well. And I thought she was outstanding in the quad series at the beginning of the year. In fact, I think I called it in Cape Town. I said that if she continues on this trajectory of, being the Silver Ferns starter and playing the way she does, she could end up being one of our most capped Silver Ferns because, at 20 years of age, she's already got that starting position for the Silver Ferns. And, we need her. She's solid at the back. In fact, I was even talking to Lee last night, Lee Gibbs again, saying that, she was probably better than what Irene van Dijk was, when Irene came to New Zealand initially. I was like, at 20, she can move. She's so strong in the air. So she's got a good brain on her. She works hard. So I think she's just sort of the complete package, She was an athlete before she played netball. She was a high jumper, so she's got those basic skills as well, which we like. We like having netballers that, have been strong in other codes because, you can often see that flourish in their netball. So, yeah, I'm really impressed. And I think, given she's only been a couple of years really in the Silver Fern environment, she hasn't by any means, hit her peak. So I think, look to see her get even better in the years to come.
Yeah, it's extremely frightening, actually, especially as an England Roses fan, imagining that we're going to be coming up against Grace Wecky for probably 10 to 15 more years.
It's just so hard to defend, isn't it? And everyone says, how do you shut her down? And it's just, I mean, getting a tall goalkeeper that's taller than her would be a start because let's be honest, getting goalkeepers in there that have got quite a big height mismatch on her, it's tough. They've got to get their jumping shoes on and you've got to apply that pressure up court and get your hands up. But at the end of the day, she's 6'4". She can jump and she can shoot. It's pretty hard to defend.
Yeah. No, I like you described her as a weapon earlier on. I think that is extremely accurate. She was sensational this weekend. And I think there was a time when I think there was one particular maybe quad series game last year, and she kind of got monstered a bit by Jiva, but then really kind of rose from that and learned from that. And you can just tell she's learning from those players around her, and being in the Silver Ferns. Yeah, absolutely can't rave enough about Grace. Next up for our second game, it was the Central Pulse edging out the Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic by 1 goal, 53 to 52. Oh, this one was a real nail biter. And it was such an interesting game for me. One of the clear standouts was Maddie Gordon, without a doubt. She was amazing. And we've actually awarded her our mid-court position in a Qtr Time Trio. She is just one of the most exciting young players, in my opinion. One of the real few who can genuinely play across all 3 mid-court positions to a very, very high standard. In this game, she had 31 feeds, 4 gains, 3 intercepts, 6 deflections, and only 4 penalties. I mean, that is ridiculous. How crucial is Maddie to this Pulse team?
Yeah, she's massive, and she's, we were hearing a lot about her in the preseason, that she's, had a really good summer, has done the work, and is looking really sharp, and she certainly showed that in that game 1. I totally agree with you, Lucy. She's one of these mid-quarters that is very strong, both on attack and defence, and you don't get many, sometimes you get an athlete that certainly favours, whether their attacking game is a lot better than their defensive one, but I think she's very well balanced in terms of the strength of both. And she is the key linchpin in that Pulse attack. And, she's in contention for Silver Ferns. She obviously got dropped for the quad series. So she will be wanting to get back in that World Cup team. And, as I said earlier on, consistency and having that intensity right from game 1 is really important for all these players. And she really put her hand up in game 1 and said, look, I'm here. I want to be back in black. Knowles will have some big question marks throughout the year on the mid-court, because there's quite a few contending for those 4 positions. Maddie's strong. She's sharp. I probably think she's a better defender. I would probably put her more wing defence centre than wing attack, because she's just so nuggety and strong and can go for that ball. But, yeah, she was, for me, a standout in that Pulse game.
Yeah, and I feel that she will, become a staple of that Silver Ferns lineup without a doubt. I mean, she's just shown such incredible promise at a young age as well. And I think you don't think of her as that young because she's been around quite a lot and you've seen a lot of her. But yeah, really, really strong, very dominant, and a fantastic stalwart of this Pulse side as well. She's been there for the past few seasons as well. But speaking of other individual players, I did feel this was a bit of a quiet game from Amelia Anacinacio by her sort of lofty standards, particularly in the first half when she was out at GA. I think she got a bit lost. She sort of was much stronger when she was back in the goal shooter position for the second half. What were your thoughts on her performance in this game?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I thought when they put her back into goal shoot, it definitely changed the dynamic on attack for the Magic. I think certainly when you look at her performance last year in the Magic, she was still coming back from her second child, and she is a lot fitter now. And I think the Magic are one of those teams that I think could really upset quite a few of the big teams this year if all their players actually put out a good performance. And Ignacio, I'm sure, will get better as the season goes on. Just felt at times she was just a little bit lackluster and not presenting as best as she could. But when she went back to goal shoot, her movements were a lot more sharper and she was available on that first second. So whether she just had a few nerves, I don't know. I think, she'll get better in that goal attack position. And of course, that combination with her and Mez is an exciting one, because when they're both on form, Mez is extremely athletic and dynamic and can jump, and her elevation is super. So, that's a really dynamic duo in that circle.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned Mez there, because I did feel the combination was a bit sticky at times. I think it's definitely got that potential, like you say, but they're still sort of working a few things out. And Bailey Mes, obviously, she's an interesting player because I personally find she's incredible at club level. I mean, I've seen performances from her when she was at the Mystics, and I just thought, oh my God, this player is just insane. She's like a once in a generation talent. But then that doesn't always translate to international level for her. The Kiwi Netball Show asked whether she could have potentially been transitioned into a defender because she hasn't always been so accurate at the post, and she does have that quote mad agility, as you mentioned there. What do you think of that as an idea?
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought she'd make a really good wing attack, and I think we all know she's athletic. She'd probably have the best vertical jump in the team. She'd probably have the one of the fastest 10-meter sprints as well. But as you say, she's pretty vulnerable under the hoop, and she's clearly shown that at international level, a shooter is not where she should be. So I've always thought that she's sort of missed the boat a little bit in that wing attack spot because she's got the vision, she's got the speed. And often having a taller wing attack, you just have that point of difference. But, teams, I guess, have just always put her into that shooting end because I guess, as you say, at franchise level, at times she can be bloody good, But, yeah, I think her days probably in the Silver Ferns, given some of the younger shooting talent that's coming through, I don't think she'd probably make the Silver Ferns coming up. But as you say, she could still, her performance that she puts in at this Magic team could upset some of the top teams.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm excited to see that combination progress over the season. I think Bailey's such a smart player as well, and so creative when she has ball in hand. So really good to watch. From the research that we've done on this episode and casting a bit of an eye over social media, a lot of people have Pulse tipped for their top three, with Yvette playing a significant part in the reasoning for this. She's been massively successful over the last 5 or 6 years, 3 titles in 2019, 2020 and 2022, 2 other grand final appearances in 2017 and 2018. What is it that makes her such a successful coach, do you think?
Well, when you look at Yvette's background, she was a player. So she played in my era, actually. She played in the Silver Ferns squad with me. And her background is teaching as well. So I think when you put those two together as a former player and a teacher who can pull people together, get the best out of everybody, I think it's a pretty good combination. So she's one of these coaches that people look up to. She's very organised. She's got a very firm plan. Players know where they stand. She gets a buy-in from her players. She's very good at building a program. And I think when you do those basics, players are drawn to want to go and play for you. So, and she's just a really lovely human as well. She did a bit of a cameo with us year before last when she wasn't coaching on the Sky Sport crew. And she's just so lovely. And when she commentates, she was so positive, and she's just one of these people that's so likable. And, that resonates with her players. And I think people are drawn to that. And that's the reason why she's been so successful.
Yeah, and she's actually stepping away from Pulse at the end of this season as well. So that will obviously potentially feed into a bit of extra pressure on them. They'll want to go back to back to, for her and to kind of really cement that legacy, I suppose. But looking then at the last game in round 1, so it was the Stars versus the Tactics, with Tactics taking the win 55-49, which really unfortunately meant Stars didn't come away with any bonus point from this game. Despite putting out such a gutsy performance, I was impressed by them in some patches. There's been a lot of talk about Tactics this season with a huge number of big names that they've got in the starting 7. However, this is maybe me being a bit critical here, but I don't think we really saw them put the foot down in this game. And the second half was even. It was actually both quarter 3 and quarter 4 was 13-all. Do you think there's more to come from them this year?
Look, I don't think you're being critical at all, Lucy. I think with everything that you're saying, you could be a commentator. You're on the money. I totally agree. Look, on paper, the Tactics, should make the final with the Mystics when you look at the players that they've got. And I was a little bit underwhelmed with them last night. I was picking that they were going to beat the Stars by quite a bit. And the Stars actually surprised me. So I think on attack, the tactics with Dunn and Tapia Selby-Rickett just at times didn't look very fluid and very connected. And I think TP at times can come in and out of games. Sometimes she looks like she's just cruising along. So I think once that connection between Dunn and Selby-Rickett is a little bit better, they might have a bit more firepower. I'm not convinced about Laura Malcolm in it centre and Poi at wing attack. I would have switched them around. For me, I think Poi is a much better centre. She's fitter. She's more of a runner, which at centre you can get away with running those lines. Malcolm's got a bit more stronger presence. She's probably better with the agility and can take the hits at wing attack. So I think I'd like to see them next weekend. In fact, they're playing the Mystics and I'm doing that game. I'd like to see a little bit of a switch between Malcolm and Poi. And I think we saw, where did we see Malcolm for the English Roses? She probably did play more centre wing defence, didn't she?
Yeah, well, that is her. I mean, she is traditionally a wing defence, and then she sort of got slid into centre and then slid into wing attack as well. And it's sort of going a bit further away from really her sort of true traditional defensive roots. And I think, I mean, we've spoken about this historically on the podcast as well, that we think that wing defence is really her number one position, and she can cover centre and cover wing attack, but really that's where she's sort of most at home. But I'm interested to see the combination and how it develops between the two of them. I think there was a lot of resetting to the transverse line, a bit of hesitation, and that they obviously, you know, were coming up against Stars defence, and that was a tough test for them, but they haven't yet faced obviously the pulse of the Mystics defenders. And could that then get them into some trouble if they're being a bit too hesitant to put the ball in?
And well, I think Poi is certainly, she's a defensive centre, so feeding is not part of her natural game. And obviously with Malcolm, if you're saying she's more of a wing defence, you know, then perhaps, and even looking last night, some of her feeds could have been better. So I think when you look at both of them, and that's the reason why they were resetting back to the line a bit more, because for one, Dunn and Selby-Rickett weren't doing enough off the ball to create that space for them to give the ball, but also because I don't think either of them are very natural feeders where they just turn and look in and give it. Yeah. So that's where Selby-Rickett and Dunn are going to have to present a lot more and so that, you know, the spaces are there so that they can give it. There's lots of tweaks I think need to be made in that tactic side. Defensively, obviously they've got Watson and Berger back. Berger got MVP. She was outstanding. And that combination will only get better with Watson. You know, we only saw a few deflections from her last night, but normally she's really getting that hand in there and getting a lot more ball. So I think the tactics will get a lot better from game one. The Stars, I think, were certainly missing Anna Harrison, Kayla Johnson. You know, they lost Greer Sinclair, who went to the tactics. So defensively, they were missing some real firepower. But I thought Ali Timu actually stood up and came out and hunted some good ball. She chucked on Kalera Nawai, Thou, and Lisa Putt. I think Thou is probably the better option in there defensively. But also I'd probably like to see Timu back at goalkeeper with Fowler in at goal defence. That's another combination that the Stars could work at. So, yeah, I think the tactics will get better. I think the Stars, for me, I think they'll be probably, if I'm going to call it early, which I'm quite good at doing, you know, I'd say Pulse Tactics Mystics would be top three.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think I probably agree with that, actually, especially based on not only the teams, but also what we've initially seen in these little peaks from the first round and some of the preseason, etc. But you mentioned there, obviously, Karen Berger, and she is unsurprisingly the final member of our Qtr Time Trio, the defender. She had 8 gains, 3 intercepts, 6 deflections, 3 rebounds, as well as 12 second phase receives. So much work going on there in attack. And the most incredible thing for me, only 6 contacts and 0 obstruction penalties in goal defense.
Pretty disciplined, right? I mean, she's come back really fit and strong and taut. Like, even just watching her sideline, she's lean and just, she looks really fit. And you know, that hard work is paying off on court. She got, you know, I think their total gains as a team was 14. So she got 50% of the tactics gains. So, just her ability to get up for high ball is just as good as her ability to punch forward and go for the intercept in the front, because she's so powerful. She's got those strong, powerful legs. So yeah, she was outstanding for me. And that combination with Watson, as I said, I don't think we've seen the best of it yet.
Yeah, another scary prospect there, especially for the Silver Ferns. Do you think that Karen Berger is the best goal defence in the world at the moment?
Yes, on a good day, I think absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think Australia, England, and I think, as you say, just looking at Berger's stats, she can get ball, but she can also not involve the umpire, which I think is a real strength. And they're the defenders that you want on the team that aren't going to give away too many penalties. So I think, certainly on that merit that, yeah, she's one of the best at the moment.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I've said it before as well, but I love when Nolene slides her into wing defense as well. I think like that's the sort of thing that if you were a wing attack and you just came up against her, you just go home. You just resign simply because she's just frightening and everywhere all at once. Yeah. So yeah, she was incredible. And looping back to just talk about the Stars quickly before we just take a wider look at the ANZ. Maya Wilson in this game shot 34 from 35 at 97%. Really, really solid stats from her. In recent years, she has suffered a little bit from a few nerves in the big moments and the shooting percentage has dipped. But this game was a really good start to her sort of 2023 campaign. What kind of structure in attack plays into Maya's strengths?
Well, I thought last night she was, and Kerry Wills, I alluded to it in one of the breaks, she was very good at doing the drop and being an option at the back. But I think, look, when Gina Crampton hits that circle edge and gets that penetration forward, Maya Wilson, her real strength is her timing. She's very good at rolling the top and just popping at the right time. I think at times she can overthink things, and that's when she gets in her own head and she gets the yips under the hoop. So I think for Maya, it's just I think focusing on one or two things and doing those skills really well. I think, when she got given the Stars captaincy a few years back, we were like, is she a little bit too young? Could she have, perhaps, was she too young to be given that captaincy? Given when you're a goal shooter, there's so much pressure on you anyway. And I think perhaps in that first year, she took a long time to really just sort of find her feet as captain. And I think that's the year that she got the yips. But I think she's growing into that leadership now, and she's starting to just think about, one or two things. And that's sort of, I think, last night she showed that she's strong under the hoop when she just sticks to the basics. She's got a lovely shot on her. She's very natural. And we saw her last year come out at goal attack as well. And in fact, Knowles put her at goal attack in the quad series as well. So she's starting to show that versatility. She's got good movement at goal attack as well. So these are the little sort of 2%ers that I think could get players over the line in the Silver Ferns if they can show a little bit more versatility than just playing one position. You look at Berger, she can slide from goal D to wing D. Maya can slide from, goal shoot to goal attack. And I think those are the little things that, could be quite favourable for some of those players when it comes to Silver Fern selection time.
Yeah, it's the age-old question of kind of how many specialists can you really afford to take to a tournament when you've only got 12 players? And we've had conversations about this from an England Roses perspective. Can we afford to take a Chelsea Pittman and a Nat Metcalf, both, sort of specialist wing attacks there? And actually, I think players do need to have more than one string to their bow now kind of in this era, especially when we're not seeing so many teams run out a 7 for the whole game. We do see a lot more different combinations and kind of different styles that you come up against. I'm just conscious of time, so I'll just take a wider look at the ANZ as a whole. So I really feel that the ANZ, it just seems to be the peak in terms of domestic netball competitions. I know the SSN is really amazing and it's very flashy and exciting, and they do have a lot of fantastic players. But I do think that there's something about the ANZ being international rules, being so closely contested because of the balance of players within the different teams and the tiering system and things like that. All the games streamed and available to watch anywhere in the world. It attracts some of the best talent, and obviously the Silver Ferns as well, featuring heavily in that. The quality of the broadcast is always top notch. So do pass that on to Sky when you're next there. And you're obviously provided with all the kind of key stats and information, and that just really helps you to kind of follow the game really closely and get really invested. And we know that there are a number of key sponsors who are backing the league, and obviously New Zealand is such a powerhouse netball nation. But alongside this, what else do you think has contributed to the league's growth in recent years?
Oh, good question. I mean, I think we're really lucky here in New Zealand that netball is the top women's sport, and just like rugby is, it's the top male sport. And I think, it's historically been the number one sport. So I work at a secondary school. We have hundreds and hundreds of kids that play netball. You go down to the local courts on a Saturday and they're just completely chock-a-block. So we've got that viewership, we've got that interest. And I think, as you say, Netball New Zealand is such a professional organisation. We get the sponsors. I think our athletes are extremely professional. They conduct themselves very well. And I think all of that contributes to netball as a sport just growing. We get the sponsors that want to back netballers because they like netballers. They're good people. They come across well. And as a result, you get the sponsorship. You get the netball on TV every week. We get how many games? 3 or 4 or 5 games a weekend. And then we get the investment. And I think, Sky Sport and Netball New Zealand have got a great relationship. We work very closely with Netball New Zealand in terms of our broadcast. What do you want us to, look at? And, we promoting the World Cup this year because, obviously it's a big year. And I think, we all work together because we want the best for our netball players. And I think as a sport, I think that's the key, is that, at that top level, we all work for each other. And you can compare to some other sports and you hear that they don't have that. But whenever anyone comes and works on the netball on our broadcast or works at Netball New Zealand, they just see that, it's these powerful women that are wanting to do well for each other and work for each other. And as a result, we get people on board and netball is growing.
Oh, I just love that. I mean, what an incredible sentiment. And to be obviously, the elite athletes that we know and love, they are those role models for those little kids going out on a Saturday to play their under 10s game, that they're inspiring the next generation. And I think the success of the Silver Ferns has obviously really fed into that. And it's almost a chicken and egg situation. I think what we find over here is we want the investment, but there's not the exposure for netball. It's only 1 game a week on television, and then this year 2 others on YouTube. And so it's sort of like trying to get the investment, but you want to get the exposure, and then you can't get the investment without it. And it's that kind of that cycle. But I think there's definitely a lot to love about the way that New Zealand Netball manage the ANZ and how closely everyone works together. I think it's really interesting.
I was just at the supermarket this morning grabbing something for school lunches, and I was at the checkout, and the lady goes to me, do you still miss playing netball? And I'm like, I'm just surprised 20 years on that people even recognize me as still being a netballer. But it's probably not because I was a netballer, it's because they're watching the netball and they still see my face as a broadcaster. So that just shows that we just still capture so many people, and we've got such an interest in the game, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I think we've got a bit of a disconnect between people who go and play netball on the weekend and then those that watch. There's such a disconnect there, and it really baffles me because I mean, obviously netball mad. I do a netball podcast, so it's unsurprising, and so I want to watch netball as much as I possibly can, and that's what inspires me when I go out on my Saturday league game to try and take a Lauren Langman intercept or anything like that. But we don't quite get that same connection. So I think still more work to do over here in England. And just a couple more questions for you, Anna, if that's all right. We asked the same question of Jenny Woods when we spoke to her last year after round 1 of the ANZ, but we'd be really interested to hear your perspective on how you would like to see the ANZ grow and develop in the coming years.
Grow and develop in the coming years. Well, I think I'd like to get back to a competition where at the end of the ANZ we get the top 2 teams and we face off against the top 2 teams in Australia, and we face off against the top 2 teams in England, and actually make it a bit of a super league. I think whilst we've all got these great competitions in our own countries, Super League, SSN, ANZ Premiership, let's then do something with that to grow the game even more, and the viewership and that competition between the three nations, chuck in South Africa if they can get a franchise together. And I think that would be a way of just developing the league a little bit more. I mean, I loved it when it was the ANZ Championship, when we, played with the Australians every week. And then that obviously fell through, and we've continued on the last sort of 6-7 years with the ANZ Premiership, and it's been fine. And I think, as I said earlier, the depth has really improved in New Zealand because we're giving more opportunities to players to make these top 6 franchises. But I just think we're just missing that next level, I think, of playing the other top nations at the end of it.
Oh, I would pay so much money to see that competition. And if it could be a regular thing, a set window every year, I think it would be feasible, particularly if it was in the non-sort of World Cup and Commonwealth Games years. So those 2 sort of in-between years where nothing really happens, then that would be, the perfect opportunity for it. Oh, well, one day, keep our fingers crossed. I'll save all my air miles just in case. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic to chat with you, Anna. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast with us and for sharing all your insight.
No, pleasure. Thank you very much.
Oh, I really loved that conversation with Anna. I think she's such an insightful person. I'm really glad that we spoke to her about the ANZ just to hear her perspective this week.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what stands out for me from that chat is, like, I don't know how to describe it, but just how good netball in New Zealand is, from them being on court to all the off-court stuff, the coaching, the broadcasting, like they've just nailed it,
Yeah, no, it is absolute quality. And I really liked what she was saying about such a loyal following of people who are playing netball on a Saturday afternoon, and then they're watching and they're fans and they're supporting, and the exposure is there. It's very visible, it's good quality, and they're really just excelling, I think.
Yeah, well, that is the stark difference, I think, between the UK or England at least and New Zealand and possibly even Australia as well. I believe they have the same problem as us. And actually, like, for people listening, we'd be really interested to know your thoughts on what we can do to bridge that gap between the number of people who play and then the number of people who watch. Like, obviously, we've got some ideas of what we think could be done in that space, but we'd love to hear your thoughts, and maybe, I don't know, together we can come up with some solutions or solve some of the problems. But
change the world.
Yeah, do let us know what you think, for sure. Thank you so much, as always, for listening to this episode of Qtr Time. We genuinely cannot wait to bring you more netball chat and another super special guest next week.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media at Qtr Time Pod for the latest netball updates. Get involved in the conversation online by letting us know what you thought of all the matches this weekend and which particular players have stood out for you.
We'd also really appreciate it if you could just take a moment to rate and review, as it does honestly help other people to find the podcast. If you enjoy listening to us, do let us know and spread the word with your netball pals so that even more people can get involved. Don't forget as well to take advantage of our exclusive discount with Lovell Netball by entering the code NETPOD15 at the checkout at lovellnetball.co.uk.
Yeah, got my new trainers the other day, Luce. Chuffed with those.
Ooh, I haven't got mine yet. I need to get on it.
Pics to follow. And next week, Lucy G will be hosting at the Copper Box on Monday, the 13th of March for the game against Strathclyde Sirens. So definitely make sure to get your tickets if you haven't already.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. Take care, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.